Welcome to another edition of Let's Talk Criterion, your exclusive channel reviewing all new Criterion releases on a weekly basis. In this edition we look at the upgrade of Eclipse No. 48, Kinuyo Tanaka Directs, coming to the collection on Blu-ray. Kinuyo Tanaka was a Japanese actress and director born in Shimonoseki. She had a career lasting over 50 years with more than 250 acting credits. She became an actress at an early age, appearing in Yasujiro Ozu's Graduated But in 1929. In 1949, she came to America on a 3-month trip as a post-war cultural envoy, and shortly after she resigned from Shochiku and announced her intention to go freelance, which would give her more time to choose which director she wanted to work with. As such, she developed a working relationship with Kenji Mizoguchi, appearing in 15 of his films, including leading roles in The Life of Oharu, Ugetsu, and Sancho the Bailiff. The Eclipse set No. 48, Kinuyo Tanaka Directs, contains the first 6 of her films as a director. Tanaka was the second Japanese woman to work as a director. She made her directing debut with Love Letter in 1953. Love Letter is a drama film, and the screenplay was written by Keisuke Kinoshita, based on the novel by Fumio Niwa. At the beginning of the feature, we meet Raikeshi Masayuki Mori, a former officer in the Japanese army, who has been living with his brother Hiroshi Uzo Dozan ever since the war ended. Now, even though he certainly does not lack intelligence, he finds himself unable to take up any job, besides the occasional translation, due to his skills in English and French. Apart from doing the housework, he often walks to the nearby train station, hoping to one day run into his former lover, Michiko, Kinuyo Tanaka herself, as the two have become separated during the war. It's on one of those walks that he encounters Yamaji, that's Yokishi Ono, an old friend of his, who takes him out on a drink and a meal and makes him a lucrative offer. Now, in the hands of Tanaka, the story of two lovers becomes not just the tale about a second chance or a reunion, but also about the possibility of moving on after the war. Throughout the story, we get to know something of a microcosm of the way people try to get by and to make ends meet, with those who carry any reminder of Japan's defeat, or the times indeed of survival being essentially outcast, for example, the women Raikeshi writes letters for. Through her view on Japanese society, Tanaka exposes aspects like hypocrisy and covering up the past, as especially the male characters in the film are keen to start anew, with new businesses and by reconnecting to their old sets of values. So in conclusion, Love Letter is an emotional feature about post-war Japan, exposing a mindset which is fast to judge and forget the experience of surviving and getting by after the defeat. Kinuyo Tanaka aims to expose hypocrisy and emotional cruelty, making her feature debut film an impressive show of talent. Moving on to the second film in the set, called The Moon Has Risen. It's from 1955. Tanaka chose a script here by Yasujiro Ozu, one of her mentors. Setsuko and her older sister Ayako live in their father's house in Nara. Ayako's aunt, who's worried about Ayako's marriage prospects as she grows older, tries to set Ayako up with a bank manager's son. Setsuko is determined not to see her sister enter into an unhappy marriage and sets about trying to spark a love interest between Ayako and Amamiya, Amamiya is a visiting friend from Ayako's past. Setsuko bounces her ideas off of Yaso, a family friend, and enlists his help, ultimately aiming to get Ayako and Amamiya to go for a moonlit walk together. Now this is a romantic comedy and contains low-angle shots similar to Ozu's own style and the casting of Shishu Ryo as Mokishi Asai. The moon has risen at times, has the same swoon-worthy character of classic Hollywood movies, but if anything filmed with more sensitivity and timidity. Now in one pivotal scene in the film, we see Ayako deceived into being alone with her love interest under the full moon, and all we see here are their feet walking away from one another, until they both stop and turn, with still only the feet being visible. This is a moment that makes you burst out in a smile, and it's typical of the happiness that flows through the veins of Tanaka's story, from the script of course by Yasuhiro Ozu, her mentor and friend. And it doesn't shy away from difficult moments, or indeed from conflict, but it's more interested in an exploration of love and independence in the middle of a changing world. In the wake of such transformation, the moon, eternal, steadfast and bright, is an everlasting sign of true love. And how Tanaka brings this idea to the forefront is quite a wonder to experience. Now the third film in the set is called Forever a Woman. This sees Tanaka fairly well established as a director now, and when it comes to the subject of Kinuyo Tanaka's career as a director, there is definitely an obvious parallel between her real life and the characters her works portray. A protagonist choosing a life outside of society's expectations of her, as a mother and a woman in general, is perhaps in some way connected to Tanaka herself, who was only the second female director in Japan, and she had to overcome many obstacles along the way before she could even make her debut feature, Love Letter, most notably Kenshi Michigushi's objection. Now with this in mind, you need to perceive Forever a Woman not just in terms of genre, but also as a piece opposing these views, which essentially get in Fumiko's way of living the kind of life she wants to, after the traditional way has failed her. Even by today's standards, this idea is quite interesting and holds a certain provocative potential, considering Japan's very homogeneous and traditional society, albeit the execution itself often fails to really make use of it. Forever a Woman is a melodrama, and it's about a woman struggling with traditions and her newfound role as an artist, especially with the way she's being perceived. Kinuyo Tanaka directs a very solid drama here with impressive performances throughout and storytelling, which ultimately fails to make full use of the controversial nature of its subject matter within the context of Japanese culture and society. In the film, most of what happens is unsaid. There's a world of everything beneath the script, ascribed meaning from that which is between the lines of what characters actually say, from whatever known history we have of those characters, and from the context of our own viewing. The poetry Fumiko writes is expanded outwards to surround and define her life as we view it, whether that is a fair way to portray a completed life or not. And the new restoration of Forever a Woman, it was restored alongside the entirety of Tanaka's directorial output, renders the lights and darks truly beautifully. Each stolen glance or averted gaze is absolutely clear, and Tanaka's subtle direction is allowed to flourish now that the prints are as clean as they can be. Now there are a number of shots of eye lines meeting in mirrors, lingering just long enough for the audience to feel how pregnant with meaning each individual moment actually is. Tanaka has a vision for how she wishes to display Fumiko's life in this film, and she shares it with us in quite a beautiful way. Now, The Wandering Princess from 1960 sees Tanaka's first film made in colour and in CinemaScope. It's a drama film starring Mashiko Kyo and Eiji Funakoshi. It was written by Nato Wada and is based on the 1959 memoir of Iro Saga. Now, while it's a reminder of the human side of history, even at the very top levels of society, it never really develops that in a dramatic way. Ryuko is a princess related to the emperor in a way not quite clear, but living with her family in a home away from the palace. Comes home from high school and is excited about a chance to move up to oil painting in her art class. Instead, she finds a messenger from the army, which has decided she should marry Futetsu. Futetsu is the brother of the Chinese emperor, nominally ruling Manchuria under Japanese control. So she's packed off to a small house in empty land near the Manchurian capital. But rather surprisingly, they make a thoroughly happy couple. He is technically a Japanese officer, speaking good Japanese. She learns Mandarin, and their daughter, Aisai, is raised to speak Chinese. Now, despite the inherent drama in this story, which is based on the memoirs of Hiro Saga, the real princess involved, given Tanaka's perception about and sensitivity to her female characters in her other movies, a screenplay by Nato Wada, Kon Ichikawa's wife and regular screenwriter, and of course the presence of Mashiko Kyo as Ryuko. This is in fact a great disappointment. It's not unusual for this to happen in Japanese historical movies or in adaptations of well-known books, where there is often an intense urge to get everything in, even if it doesn't contribute to the dramatic arc of the story itself, or could be condensed into one scene or brief narration. It's especially frustrating here because almost every critical moment tends to happen off screen. A maid shutting the screens just as Ryuko is to announce her acceptance or refusal. The emotional reunion with Ryuko's family skipped completely, and the Manchurian Empress's opium addiction is so downplayed in the film that it only dawns on us at the last moment. Now, the Manchurian Emperor is a Chinese actor, in fact, Yang Ming-long, as is his Prime Minister, but everyone else in the film is Japanese. Now, if the lip-syncing can be trusted, Kyo speaks her own Mandarin lines, though a group of kids make fun of her accent. But Eiji Funakoshi, as Futetsu, appears to have been overdubbed in his Chinese scenes. Now, The Wandering Princess is a tellingly anachronistic modern-age film that gets its point across precisely by stressing and being its contradiction. It's also one of Mashiko Kyo's most wide-ranging performances, as unique as any other film from Tanaka, and as illuminating of a cinematic treatment on Manchukuo as any of its later and better-known equivalents. Girls of the Night sees Tanaka reunited with screenwriter Sumi Tanaka to explore Japan's attempted reformation of former sex workers. Now, the film Girls of the Night could be taken as a pointed response, or perhaps a sequel indeed, to Street of Shame. That's the final feature made by Kenji Michiguchi, the director, of course, with whom Tanaka as an actress is most closely associated. While Michigushi's film offers a harsh indictment of state-regulated prostitution that in fact was claimed by many to have inspired Japan's 1956 anti-prostitution law, in Tanaka's hands, however, the same subject of exploited women is approached from a radically different angle, looking now at the effects of the new law that closed down the legalised brothels while also creating a nefarious sex trafficking underworld. Focused on a centre for the rehabilitation of sex workers, Girls of the Night follows the travails of one young woman. She leaves the safe house only to struggle bitterly to shed her past. Adopting the perspective of the young woman, effectively played in the film by Hisako Hara, Tanaka reveals the omnipresent and insidious prejudice against fallen women, most notably from other women. Now, the film was produced in 1961 by Tokyo Eiga Company Limited and Toho, with principal photography emphasizing authentic depictions of post-war Japanese settings to support its focus on rehabilitation centres and urban hardship. Technical specifications include black and white cinematography chosen to evoke the gritty austerity of the era without visual embellishment. Kinuyo Tanaka directs the film with an eye towards unadorned realism, employing subdued techniques such as restrained scoring and available light approaches to trace the unvarnished causal dynamics of desperation, though specific budget figures remain undocumented for the film amid typical constraints for independent Japanese productions of that particular time. Now, the 1956 prostitution prevention law, while diminishing visible licensed brothels and thus public stigma through closure of regulated districts, inadvertently heightened clandestine risks and spurred black market expansion. In the 2010s and 2020s, Girls of the Night underwent significant restoration, including a 4K digital version premiered at venues like the Berkeley Art Museum and the Pacific Film Archive in June of 2022 and the Harvard Film Archive in February of 2023 as part of the broader retrospective celebrating director Kinuyo Tanaka's oeuvre. And finally, we have Love Under the Crucifix. Now, this is a drama film from 1962, and the American title, though given here, is a little bit misleading. Now, though the movie is set in the 1580s, when there was a serious attempt to suppress Christianity in major part because it led to contact with foreigners, the film itself is not about Christians, or indeed their persecution. Rather, it is about the persecution of the respectable woman in love, and is arguably the most intensely Japanese movie of the early 60s. The Japanese title is essentially Miss Gin, pronounced with a hard G, not like the drink, and the movie is the story of unrequited love for Ogin. He's both married and a Christian, the only Japanese Christian to appear in the course of the movie, and when she was a teenager he gave her a Christian book that taught that chastity was the greatest of all virtues. This is hardly unique to Christian teachings for women, as the Japanese certainly expected virginity in their official brides, at least among the merchant and noble classes. But Gin takes it to mean she must remain chaste until she can be with her one true love. And even after she's married, she refuses to have sex with her husband for 3 years. Now, the crucifix does figure in the story. However, Japan did crucify some criminals, usually adulterers. Gin witnesses a procession of a woman on her way to be crucified, but her crime is not adultery, but rather her refusal to commit adultery with the Lord. And the real religion in the film is the Japanese tea ceremony. Gin's father is the great Lord's tea master, and all the crisis points of the film are punctuated by tea ceremonies. Now, the script does take some effort to connect the Christians with foreign trade. Gin's husband is a rich merchant who, though not Christian himself, has a rug on the floor and a western bed, for example. And whenever we meet the priest, he is always preceded by comments about trade. Now, this would be Tanaka's only jidaikeki and her last movie as a director, although she would continue to act almost until her death. The 4 of these 6 movies testify to a thoughtful and sensitive director here, able to adapt her approach to fit the story and always deeply concerned with the characters. She should have been able to make more films, and she ought to have received considerably more attention among historians and critics, whose histories of Japanese film and indeed of female directors in Japan, they tend to ignore her completely. Clearly, Criterion have rectified this with their Blu-ray release of this 6-film Eclipse set number 48 in the collection, and it contains a booklet with an essay by Imogen Sarah Smith. The set consists of 6 films, and here are their running times and aspect ratios. Now, the set releases on Blu-ray over 3 discs on Tuesday the 28th of April in the collection. Next time on Let's Talk Criterion, we'll be taking a look at the Hood trilogy of films. That's directed by John Singleton. That's Boys from the Hood, Poetic Justice and Baby Boy. They're all coming to the US collection in 4K UHD. So until then, from me, as always, it's goodbye and above all, good Criterion viewing.